Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin by thanking Christina and Christina for the invitation. I'd also like to thank the people who in the archives that helped me put this together. The team that was working on this was led by Mr. Chad Ragodon, and Ms. Eileen Bergonio. And finally, the main transcriber and translator of this document that I will talk about is Dr. Teresita Ignacio. So this is a survey of records at the National Archives related to the British invasion. There are several published works in the on the British-Philippine interlude of the 18th century. Among these is the popular 2003 monograph by Shirley Fish, which provides an overview of the complex events of that fateful sojourn. This was when Britain ruled in the Philippines, 1762 to 64. Then there are a number of comprehensive histories of the Philippines which make mention of the British years. Some of these are Eufronio Alip's Philippine History of 1940. Then we have Gregorio Saide, Teodoro Agoncillo with Milagros Guerrero, History of the Filipino People, which is a very important textbook. And then Antonio Molina, The Philippines Through the Centuries of 1960. And then we have O.D. Corpus, The Roots of the Filipino Nation, 1989. Of the aforementioned, Molina and Corpus discussed the interlude extensively. Meanwhile, Alip, Agoncillo, and Zaide mentioned the British only in passing, in conjunction with the revolts of the period. One may also come across published collections of records such as Nicholas Kushner's 1971 documents illustrating the British conquest, as well as Horacio de la Costa's 1962, The Siege and Capture of Manila by the British. To these may be added Saide's collected records on the tumultuous episode, which form volume 5 of his gargantuan documentary Sources of Philippine History, which came out in 1990. Carlos Quirino had an article from 1968 entitled Aftermath of the British Invasion of the Philippines. This brief article, it turns out, deals not so much with the effects of 1762, but rather with suggestions made in 1803 for Britain to occupy the Philippines yet again. Finally comes the 2021 article by Bruce Cruikshank, The British Occupation of Manila Through Franciscan Eyes. Interestingly, as an initial survey will show, these publications do not seem to use as source materials records from the National Archives of the Philippines, which is commonly known by its rather somnolent acronym NAP, nor from its predecessor, the Records Management and Archives Office. It's funny to work in an office called NAP. Anyway, this may well be because, as mentioned, the survey is preliminary. There was not enough time to review other publications such as the collection of Darren Robertson. Then again, scholars had specific concerns and specific circumstances. De la Costa aimed to introduce records pertaining to the siege found in the archives of the Jesuit province of Aragon, kept in the College of San Francisco de Borja, in the town of San Cugat de Valles, outside of Barcelona. One cannot help but wonder, though, why Shirley Fish, who carried out research on the British occupation in archives in London and Manila, thanks 3 institutions in the UK, but in the Philippines, only the Filipinas Heritage Library. Does this mean that she did not visit the Philippine Archives? In a similar vein, it might be noted that Dr. Cruikshank's professed goal is to demonstrate what was supposed to be the view or even the experience of members of the Franciscan Order of the British interlude in the Philippines. Yet it will soon be seen that practically all the documents he consulted are not from the Philippines, but from the Archivo Franciscano Ibero-Oriental in Madrid. At this point, it must be clarified that this discussion is in no way meant to disparage the scholars mentioned here, but here for not using materials from the NAP. After all, the survey undertaken for this paper may have missed NAP-sourced records used in publications and using the publications under study. Secondly, a lot of the records discussed here have in fact originated in the Philippines and brought elsewhere. Surely it is not being suggested that documents in the Philippines but found in other parts of the world are in some way inferior to those located in the archives of Manila. What is being put forward for the purposes of this paper is that many histories of the 1762 to 1764 adventure seem to not have consulted the NAP collection. There are probably many reasons why this is so. One of the most obvious is that the National Archives collection is known to be difficult to use. For one thing, the archives has constantly moved to other quarters. There was no organized or omnibus archives in the Philippines in the Spanish period. Each agency took care of its own records. At one point, many records were stored in the former Aduana, later Intendencia, which was built in 1823, then damaged and reconstructed. As stipulated by the Treaty of Paris of 1898, records from different Spanish government offices were hastily put together to turn over to the Americans, who then initiated an archives office. The documents gathered from the departing Spanish agencies formed the nucleus of the NAP Spanish collection. After its American beginning, the archives began its long search for a home. I'm getting nervous because you're raising the paper with the
I'm just looking at
The collection has been housed in just place. Be careful with that paper. The collection has been housed in such places as a panopticon. Oh. Ayate. Next one. Okay. They were housed in this panopticon, the former Bilibid Prison, an abandoned ice plant, the University of the Philippines Library, and the National Library. Many documents were lost in the transfer. The archives collection has suffered much violence through the years. There is mention of archives being ransacked during the fall of Manila in 1762. Christina was talking about books and libraries, no? This could not have been a central repository because there was none, but the document storage of certain offices. One has to wonder why pillaging soldiers would dally among dusty records. Perhaps this ransacking was fueled by confusion and overpowering emotions. Then again, it may be remembered that building designs, navigation charts, maps provide essential information for invaders, aside from providing fodder for trade espionage. Remarkably, it was because of these tales of destruction that some attention would be paid to the archival materials in Manila. Sometime after 1764, it was ordered by the Spanish king that the damage during the British years be assessed with regard to records, no? And when feasible, copies made of lost files should be made, no? There are also typhoons, earthquakes, conflagrations, and all kinds. So later on, there would be stories of American soldiers using records as kindling and for other bodily functions. This is the bombing there, and then there is the bombing of the Intendencia. During World War II, when many documents were most likely destroyed. One also hears, and there were all their buildings destroyed, no? One also hears of pilfering as records become collector's prizes. Sometimes though it would be so full of people are reading room, but they were all there to steal documents. One also hears of pilfering, no? But finally one comes across essays published in the 60s and the 70s discussing the ills of neglect and lack of official support. With all these negative feedback, is it any wonder why some researchers have shied away from the NAP? Fortunately, there are improvements. No? We receive a grant from CSIC in Spain, or from the Spanish government to fix the National Archives. And I'm happy to say that the Intendencia, long a ruin, is now being restored as the headquarters of the National Archives of the Philippines. and the final home of the Spanish records. There have been microfilming and digitization programs sponsored by CICIG and by our own government. While the Intendencia is being readied, the temporary reading room. I'm just so happy that we have one. At the Guazon Street building in Paco is open to serve digital copies as the originals are now too frail to share. Despite its unfortunate past, the NAP managed to retain many informative and beautiful documents, such as this beautifully colored 1821 map have never been shown to the public until now. No, they have always been off limits. No? Now we share them, and so altogether, these come out to about 28 million pages of information. For this conference, record series were picked out that included the year 1761 to 1770. And then based on that, we looked for records that mention the British in Spanish, using, of course, the Spanish words. And we came out with about, in one section, in the digitized section, about a certain number, no? And then with the non-digitized section, we had to do it one by one. Altogether, we came out with 384 pages of records dealing with the British occupation. It must be noted that this was just an initial survey. Further searches in the future will yield more results. I'll give the bag to whoever can read the documents very quickly. Jody, you wanna try? Anyway, perhaps some of the interesting records are a report on the silver objects collected from churches for the ransom of Manila and a report on looting. Perhaps one of the most extensive documents found is a long letter of Father Roque de la Purificacion to Simon de Anda, dated April 21, the birthday of the Queen, April 21, 1763. From the very start, one has to wonder how this document ended up in NAP. Did Father Roque's letter ever get to Anda, who at the time must have been in Pampanga? Or was it never sent? Was the letter, and I'd like to hear what you think, was the letter an 18th century document or a copy, since it is known that copies were ordered for records lost? Bruce Quickshank discusses Father Roque in his article, but does not include this letter among his sources. Father Roque was born on the 16th of August, 1703, in Abinojar, a town near Toledo. He had this profession in 1723 and served in the Philippines in the towns of Meycauayan in Bulacan and Mauban and Tayabas ng Carlan and other towns in the Banahaw area. He must have become quite familiar with this region, and his knowledge of the land may have helped him in the fight against the British. He was made provincial of Franciscans in 1762, just before the start of the invasion. Father Roque appears to be writing from the mountain town. Father Roque appears to be writing from the mountain town of Lucban. Nina, I just wanted to be sure there were pretty pictures also. So you're not the only one. Father Roque appears to be writing from the mountain town of Lucban, which is protected from attackers by its elevation and its surrounding forest. He had obviously fled the Franciscan mother house in Intramuras in Manila to seek shelters on the slopes of Mount Banahaw. He is evidently a supporter of Anda in the campaign against the British, as his letter reports on the movements of the enemy as they enter Laguna de Bai. I don't have a pointer, so from Manila, he's reporting that the enemy is entering Laguna de Bai, the Great Lake of the Mother at the heart of southern Luzon. He tells of two small ships or galleritas accompanied by four champanes, which I don't think is champagne, or sampans entering the lake, probably by sailing up the Pasig River from Manila Bay. They pass the towns, he says, no, that they pass the towns of Pila, Bai, and finally Los Baños. And I presume that they dock at Los Baños. He's reporting now on the movements of the British. They dock at Los Baños and march overland to San Pablo, where they imprisoned the parish priest, the choir, and two Spaniards, showing that the town didn't seem to be very well defended. Eventually, the forces take Lipa in the neighboring province of Batangas, where they hold up. Father Roque provides some information about the geography of Lipa before going on to note that the British have only two escape routes from Lipa. The first is via Indang and then Silang, and eventually the port of Cavite. You can see it naman. Well, Cavite isn't shown, no? The little spit of land where the city is. And the second is to descend to Calamba, follow the coastline to where the lake drains into the coastline of the lake, no? To where the lake drains into the Pasig River, and take the river back to Manila. The good priest then piously urges Anda to ambush the British while they're making their escape. What is remarkable about Father Roque's letter are the many details he supplies. His report may be one of the few descriptions of sampans in Laguna de Bai. Grace told me about other descriptions. And what a sight they must have been together with the galleritas, no? And it must have been something to behold. And in front of this site, before this site, the people fled. The priest also explains that one of the sampan captains came from Camarines, indicating how the supporters of the invaders came from very far afield, can come from very far afield, no? Moreover, one can discern that the captain of the sampan was very likely Chinese, indicating that the Chinese were involved with the British, no? He discusses, or some Chinese anyway, he discusses how there was much fear among the natives who think that the British may have had wings like angels. He literally says wings of angels, no? Since they were able to move so fast. He describes the fear as causing the feet and the hands not to follow the urge to stay and not run away. What is most significant is the report that the people of the towns of Tayabas and Mahayhay rose up and laid out special demands. Though Father Roque's narration is not very clear, it seems that the people of the two towns wanted more protection for those who were fighting off the British and helping in the defense of their Spanish overlords. The Franciscan does not specify what the townspeople actually did, but it becomes clearer at the end of the letter that the residents had performed a marvelous act because Father Roque praises them by saying, or the people of Mahayhay at least, by saying that their manifestations of gratitude could not be easily found elsewhere. In other words, what they did was a manifestation of gratitude by defending the Spaniards, no? Interestingly, Tayabas and Mahayhay are known for the extensive Spanish period infrastructure of huge churches, numerous chapels, and impressive bridges. Could this have been built as a reciprocal gesture of thanks? In closing, it can be pointed out that the records like the one cited by the history writers that have been previously discussed tell of the grim realities of geopolitics as protagonists calculate how much is a city worth in silver. Yet records like Father Roque's letter and its rather intimate description of the actions and perceptions of townspeople at the very edge of the metropole show that sacks and sieges may be narrated through epics of battles and the brave, but they may also be whispered through tales of the flights of angels and the gesticulation of gratitude. I leave you with these last two images of Rococo retablos or altar screens, one from the Laguna de Bai area and one from Cebu. This is the Cebu one. Rick, is this, I cannot see it. Sa Tanay? This is also Argao. This is also Cebu. So, and this is Tanay, no? I leave you with these two images. Regalado Jose, who's just talking right now. Regalado Jose points out that Rococo, the Rococo motif of the misshaped irregular medallion known as the Rokai, as the Rokai Arabesque, began to be seen in Philippine churches from about 1750 to the 1790s. What he doesn't say in this article that was published in the book by Nina, what he doesn't say is whether the British invasion may have created an environment for the strangely shaped medallions to be more appreciated. The Rokai examples shown here I'm sorry, you can't really see them very clearly. The Rokai example shown here, these are Rokai examples that are unusual because they have integrated into them architectural elements, and also that there's a very strange innovation of Rokai medallions that are hanging from garlands. No, was this a result of was the same assertiveness that the people of Mayhay and Tanay and Tayabas that I described in this paper? Was this assertiveness a context for artistic innovation and experimentation? Perhaps it is time to find out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Manalo, for keeping to the time. I didn't even have to raise
Okay.
the
But I can
paper.
continue.
Yeah. I even embellished it with.
Seriously, quickly. This is the medallion I'm talking about. And you see some architectural images, elements integrated into it, which has been pointed out is quite unusual. No, there.
Thank you. We look forward to visiting the National Archive, especially when, yeah. Sir, the Intendencia, when will it open?
Hopefully 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we'll go to Paco.
Yeah.
No? Yes.